Okay, so this is my Quipu. Let me tell you all about it. Okay, so first we have this orange bead right here. This is the cortex. This represents the cortex, which is the part of the brain that deals with memory, language, attention, thoughts. I picked this bead because it's big and orange, and just it reminds me of the brain, just the color and the size of it. And the cortex is really important in education because it deals with all of our thinking, our memory, and as a learner, all those things are really important. Next, we got this little green bead right here. This is the limbic system, or this represents the limbic system, which is which deals with our behavior and emotions, and that's important because uh, when you're a student, dealing like kids have emotions and different types of behavior, and all those are going to be factors in the classroom, and something that as a teacher we'll have to deal with. Yep, limbic system deals with behaviors and emotions. Next up, we have this gold bead right here, which represents novelty. Novelty is change. Basically any type of change, which stimulates our brains. Our brains love change, and our brains are constantly being aroused by new things and sparked, and just our brains love stimulation. So in the classroom, novelty is really whenever a student sees or learns something new, that's novelty. Yep. So next we have, we have these beads, which all deal with memory. So we have immediate memory, working memory, long-term memory, and then long-term storage. So immediate memory is when you first see things, first process things for the first couple of seconds. When you first see information, and then you decide if it's going to go into your working memory or if you're not going to hold on to it and it's just going to go like right over your head. So that's immediate memory into working memory. Working memory is sort of like your short-term, your working memory right before it goes into long-term, and you process it, your brain processes it and encodes it and breaks it down into long-term memory. And then from long-term memory, that's when you remember things for a while and keep them in your mind. And then from there, it goes into long-term storage, which is your brain's permanent storehouse for information. And that's where you keep all your anything that you can dig back into and remember from like years and years ago back. That's long-term memory. So these 4 beads are really important for education. I chose this one with the gears. The flower of the gears for working. This big one for storehouse, the long-term storage, because it's just a big blue bead, and to me, it represents something big that holds a lot of information, like our brains do. And this is long-term storage or long-term memory, because it goes from there into there, and then into the long-term storehouse. It just goes, yeah. And then next I have this brown bead here, which is retention. And retention is being able to go back into your long-term memory and get the information out of there, process, and basically recall the information that you learned and remembered. So that's this brown bead. And then next we go down to procedural memory, which is learning any cognitive or like sort of motor skill, and then actually like remembering it and learning, like remembering how you learned it, and remembering how you learned it by actually doing something, like riding a bike or like playing basketball, or by actually doing something like remembering physically how to do it, like ride a bike. And I picked this bead because it just sort of, with procedural memory, you're actually doing something, and this bead reminds me of like actions and actually doing something. Then next we have this green bead and this yellow bead and this little guy right here. These all have to do with transfer of learning. So first we have positive transfer of learning, negative transfer of learning, and then just general transfer of learning. So basically, positive transfer of learning is when you're able to look back on past experiences and remember what you learned and have that affect how you learn something new. For example, if you are learning how to play violin and you already know how to play viola, then you're going to know that's going to help you learn how to play violin because it's similar. It's a similar instrument. It's similar structure, similar motions. And that's just going to, as opposed to if you played another instrument like trombone and we're learning how to play violin, that would be a lot more difficult to learn how to do. And negative transfer is when past experiences and past learning get in the way of what you're trying to learn or what you're trying to do. So like if you're trying to learn how to drive a stick shift car and you're used to driving an automatic, it's going to be a lot difficult because you're going to have a lot harder time figuring out what to do with like the pedals, and it's just going to be a lot more difficult for you to figure out the motions and sort of how to go about driving a stick shift car. And this bead right here is transfer of learning, and basically this just represents how past experiences, past learning are always there with us. They're always going to influence our thinking, what we're doing, how we're learning. Past experiences are always there. And all transfer of learning, positive and negative, affect education every day and affect us every day because our past experiences, they affect us, whether we're using them like similar experiences to learn how to do something new, or if like a similar past experience that we learned is affecting what we're trying to do, what we're trying to learn in a negative way and kind of inhibiting us from doing so. So transfer of learning is always with us. We're always dealing with it throughout learning. Okay, next we have this white bead, which represents association, and association is just when you learn two things, they're associated with each other. So if you learn how to do addition and subtraction, when you start doing addition, you start thinking about subtraction. So association is basically just thinking of the other thing that you were learning when you were learning this thing. So when you learn one thing, it automatically prompts up in your brain the other thing that you learned with it. So that's association, and that's really in education. That happens all the time. You learn multiple things. You teach multiple things, and those in students' minds, we associate things with each other all the time to help us remember, help us learn. So that's association. I picked the white bead for it because it just it reminds me of just things kind of coming together, I guess, and being together associated with each other. Okay, next we have this red and orange bead here, and that's the right hemisphere and left hemisphere. L for left hemisphere, and I wanted to find an R for right, but I couldn't find any R's, so I got red, and that starts with an R, so right for red, or R for red, R for right. So the left hemisphere controls the right side of our bodies, and the right hemisphere controls the left side. And the right hemisphere deals with kind of negative emotions and visual patterns and images, like learning from images and making sense of images and visual patterns. Whereas the left hemisphere deals with our sense of time, how we view things, making sense of numbers and words, so like reading, writing, doing math, so making sense of numbers and words. That's the left hemisphere. And I mean, these affect us we use these constantly. This is how we function: left hemisphere, right hemisphere. That's how it does everything for us, pretty much. Writing, reading, controls everything. Next, we have specialization. S for specialization. That's just the idea and the fact that each part of our brain does something specific, and each part of our brain has its own function, which goes down to the frontal lobe, which the frontal lobe deals with sort of regulating the limbic system and our thinking, our critical thinking, and regulates the limbic system and our thinking. That's what the frontal lobe does. I picked this bead because it's just the way it looks sort of reminds me of what a frontal lobe would look like. I know it sounds kind of weird, but yep, that's why I picked it. And then next, these 4 beads here all represent the arts, which are just necessary for stimulating our brains and helping us learn, grow, and develop. So we have movement arts, this little gear right here. Then we have visual arts, this V. Then we have musical arts, this guy right here. And then we have linguistics. So movement, visual, linguistics. Movement, visual, linguistics, and music. Yep. So all 4 of these things really affect and help stimulate our brain and affect how we learn and grow as people and as how our brains develop. So music, as we talked about this earlier in class, we feel it. We feel music, and it's a big part of just we can learn so much from music. You really feel it. It has a big impact on us, and it really stimulates the brain. Music is great for education, great for teaching students. It's just a great tool. And then movement arts, physical exercise is a really big thing with education. Very important, and it keeps our brain working, keeps blood flowing, keeps us energized, keeps us moving, keeps us healthy. Movement exercise is huge. And then visual and linguistic arts. Visual and linguistic arts. Linguistic talking is a big thing with our brains that really affects how it's a big talking and visualizing things are really key in stimulating our brains. When we see things, different images, different pictures, all different types of visuals stimulate our brains. We remember them. They interest us. They spark interest in us. They stimulate our brains. Same with reading, writing, talking, hearing words from people, hearing words in different sounds, different ways. We hear words. All of those things stimulate our brains. So these 4 beads, the arts, really are just all about stimulation in the brain, which is key for education, for learning new things. It's key. So that's the arts. And then right here, these 3 beads, we have flashbulb memories, practice, and then making sense of your memories. So flashbulb, and I picked F for flashbulb, this for practice. It sort of reminded me purple for practice. I don't know. And then making sense of memories, I picked an M. So flashbulb memories are when we think of something or look back on something that had a big impact on us or excited us, and and it's just a vivid memory. And then practice is just practice of actions, different things, repetition. Practice makes perfect. And then making sense of our memories is just really going back into these beats here, memories, and just being able to recall them and just make sense of what we're thinking and our different memories. And so here's my Quipu right here. That's pretty much my video. All right, thank you.